All right, we're live.
I'll just go. All right. Happy holidays, everybody, and welcome to a special edition of College Pride Press Game Day. I am your host, Noah Holley, joined alongside by my co-host, Sean Bock. Today, we are proud to present to you our first half awards episode. So how this is going to work is me and Sean will take turns handing out the show's picks for various first half awards. It's very different from what we usually do, no game previews. As with this weekend being Christmas weekend, there are no college games worth noting being played. We're just going to be looking back at the first half of the season, or at least non-conference play, whichever way you want to look at it. Should be a lot of fun. Consider it CPP Game Day's Christmas gift to all you guys. All right, as always, we'll start off with introductions. It's just me and Sean this afternoon, no guest analysts. But in case we have any new listeners, I am Noah Holley, a 14-year-old intern for collegepridepress.com. All right, what about you, Sean?
I'm Sean. I'm a 17-year-old senior at Bennett Academy in Lyle, Illinois. Big Indiana fan, and yeah, I'm excited. It's been a good first half or so of the college basketball season, and we're hoping to give you guys a couple of Christmas presents here in this show. So stay tuned, stay with us. It won't be too long, but it should be a good show.
Yeah. All right, sounds good. As always, remember to subscribe to us on iTunes and YouTube, and follow us on Twitter at CPP Game Day. All right, let's get into the show. So the first award that we're going to be doing is Game of the First Half. Sean has that one. Let's get to you on that one, Sean. What's your pick for Game of the First Half, or our pick, I should say?
So with some of the non-conference, you kind of get some cupcake games, like the top seeds play the sub 300 teams a little bit, and then there's always some games where you get a number, let's say number 3 versus number 7 or something like that. And we've been fortunate enough to have games like that early on this season, especially with the North Carolina, Kentucky, Kansas IU, and Duke versus Kansas. So the first category will be the game of the first half, and the nominees for that one is Kansas and Indiana in the Armed Forces Classic, which was the first game of the year. As we know, Indiana won in overtime or double overtime. In Kansas in the Champions Classic, Frank Mason hits a mid-range jumper with a couple seconds left to beat the shorthanded Duke. And the third and final game is the most recent one, as Kentucky knocked off UNC, and as we know, Malik Monk put up 47 that game, which was the highest scoring total in Kentucky history. So the winner for that one is obviously the Kentucky-North Carolina game, which took place last Saturday in Las Vegas at the CBS Sports Classic. And as I mentioned earlier, Malik Monk putting up 47 points. And it was just, this game was absolutely insane. Back and forth battle throughout. No team was going to give up. North Carolina was down by maybe 10 at one point in the second half, and then came storming back. And honestly, I thought they had it. I thought they had it at the end. Jackson hit that 3 with 1:37 to go. I thought there was no way that this North Carolina team would blow it, but Kentucky proved me wrong, and Malik Monk was just absolutely unreal from outside and just all over, having 47. And it was just a big win for Kentucky. As we know, they lost to UCLA the week or two before. So that game was definitely one that college basketball fans will remember for a long time, as a game that no one really knew what to expect coming into it. We expected a great game, of course, but really it exceeded my expectations, as Kentucky barely pulled it out in the end. And both teams combined for 203 points. So not as much people would say not much defense, but I think it was just a great offensive show, and definitely one that college basketball fans will remember for a while.
All right. Good job there. All right, so I'm going to be talking about our nominee for upset of the first half, or the winner of that, I should say, and that is Fort Wayne over Indiana back in November, a few days before Thanksgiving, I believe. Fort Wayne won that game 71-68 in overtime for their first ever win over a major conference team, or a ranked team, I should say. And the reason this upset was so special is because it was a rare chance, or it was one of the rare instances that an in-state powerhouse visited a low major in-state rival. And Indiana Purdue Fort Wayne took advantage of it and somehow, some way stunned then number 3 Indiana. And if you want to know how much this win meant to IPFW, you just have to go back and watch their coach John Kaufman's heartfelt thank you to Indiana coach Tom Crean for scheduling that game. It was. I mean, you just, like I said, you never really see stuff like this happen. It was just the perfect Cinderella story. It was IPFW's second ever meeting against Indiana, and certainly the first one at home, I believe. So kudos to Indiana for scheduling that game. Very good for college basketball, and kudos to IPFW for pulling that one out. Another one I considered for this award was Indiana State over Butler, which had almost identical storylines, both Indiana teams. This one was special as well because it was Indiana State alum Larry Bird's 60th birthday. So that was pretty cool. But yeah, that's CPP Game Day's pick for upset of the first half. All right, let's get to you, Sean, on the, let me see here, performance of the first half.
So earlier I talked about Kentucky and North Carolina in that game, how great it was. And you're going to get much of the same with this category. The performance of the first half is Malik Monk's 47 points versus North Carolina. There's really no other person, or there's really no other kind of player game that really sticks out to anyone except for this one. Malik Monk, just an outstanding freshman, put the team on his back, just was draining from everywhere, and that 3 at the end really capped it off. So really not going to talk about much about him on that one. But another one I was kind of looking at, another nominee was the Dwayne Russell for Grand Canyon.
Put up 40, I was going to say that.
Yeah, 42 points against Louisville, and got high praise from Rick Pitino after the game and the whole program. And they're not even NCAA tournament eligible, I believe, this year. So definitely that's a big Dwayne Russell's 42 is definitely a big just like confidence booster, like something to remember for that program as they join in the D1 ranks soon. So that's definitely one of the other nominees.
Also, you would have to point out Grand Canyon, they have a lot of school spirit at that. Yeah. I mean, the home games there, I mean, that's a crazy environment.
Yeah, you should definitely check out. They have a video, their student section on YouTube, and it's absolutely insane. It's better than most Division I schools.
Yeah.
And they're not even tournament eligible.
No. All right, so
now Noah's going to talk about the coach of the first half, as we've seen. Not really team of the first half, but kind of the coach that's really proved us wrong and really brought his team to where they are today.
So the winner that we have selected is Scott Drew of Baylor, who has kind of gotten a bad rap over the years as not being one of the better coaches, but there are many reasons that Drew should be considered as one of the better coaches in college basketball. There's a great article on SI.com that explains why Drew is such a good coach, despite what people may think. That I would definitely recommend checking out. One of the examples is that he's not doing this with elite recruits. This year he's doing this with transfers. I mean, his star player, Jonathan Motley, is a guy that has had some of the worst consistency issues you've ever seen before this year. On paper, this is not a powerhouse team and never really has been. But Scott Drew has made this team a contender year in and year out. But the reason why I think Drew is the coach of the first half is because, or this is the 1 year where Drew has finally stepped out and proved that, I mean, he's for real, because this is the first time in his tenure that Baylor is like up there with all the blue bloods. I mean, they're number 4 in the country right now. Definitely playing great basketball. So that's my pick for the coach of the first half. Another one that I considered was Chris Holtmann of Butler, who is already known around college basketball as as a really good coach. But he's done a great job with Butler, which is something that Sean is going to talk about in just a little bit. Speaking of that, why don't we get to our biggest surprise team winner, Sean?
So the biggest surprise winner, much like Noah said, is not Baylor, but it's Butler and Chris Holtmann's team. Really coming into the season, Butler lost 2 of their best players from years before, Roosevelt Jones and Kellen Dunham. And they really brought in a couple guys that really no one, role players on last year's team, but didn't really do much. So when they beat Northwestern, a very good Northwestern team early on in the year by 2 points. I mean, we kind of thought Butler's always been a good team. They've always played hard. And then they beat Vanderbilt by 10 points, who was kind of struggling this year. And then they played Arizona Thanksgiving weekend and just knocked off the Wildcats. I mean, give credit to the Wildcats. They don't have Alonzo Trier, but Arizona is a very good team. And Butler definitely was a big upset against Arizona, as we didn't really know anything about this Butler team, really. There were a lot of question marks. And then they played Utah, who was also a decent team, and beat them. And minus really the Indiana State loss, there's been wins against Cincinnati, even though Cincinnati barely knocked off, I forget who it was last night, but Cincinnati is a very good team and definitely one of the favorites in the AAC. And then they played Indiana. And that Indiana, as we know, is one of the most high efficient offenses besides the turnovers in the country. And it seemed like Indiana really had no point in the game where they could come back, and they just knew how to control the pace, control the game, and just really picked Indiana apart, really played according to their game and really found Indiana's weaknesses and exploited them. So basically Butler, led by Keelan Martin and Kamar Baldwin, Martin a junior and Baldwin a freshman, those have really been the 2 main guys. And a big boost from Tyler Lewis, their point guard, transfer from NC State, who was actually a McDonald's All-American coming out of high school. You wouldn't really know by the way his averages, but really he's the guy that brings this Butler team together. And as we all know, there's got to be one player on every team that really brings the team together in order for them to be successful. So Lewis is really the guy for them. And this Butler team really, they proved to us that they can really compete with anyone. They open up against St. John's on the 29th of December in Big East play, but they really got a chance to do something in this Big East and maybe knock off Villanova, give Villanova a run for its money, and maybe even Creighton too. Who knows? But I think this Butler team has a legitimate chance to be a contender in the Big East. So definitely Butler is one of the big most surprising teams this year. So with that being said, yeah, go ahead.
I actually would like to. It was Marshall, I believe, the team that Cincinnati
Marshall, yeah,
beat
that's what it was.
last night. Yeah. All right, so I'm going to be talking about the winner for the most disappointing team, which goes to the Michigan State Spartans. And so Michigan State, their losses weren't really to bad teams. It was Arizona, Kentucky, Baylor, Duke, all very, very good teams. Until this past week when they lost to Northeastern. And then I think a lot of people looked up and said, uh-oh, what's wrong with Michigan State? This team has yet this team almost all of their games are a battle for them. They've really underplayed to competition this year. Winning games against low and mid-major schools by like 5 or 6 points at best. There's no doubt that this is a talented team, but they have yet to prove that they are capable of beating um, a, an elite team, like a truly quality team. Injuries have been an issue for the Spartans. Obviously, Gavin Schilling being out, could be out for the season. But I still believe that Michigan State is a tournament team, especially watching how point guard Cassius Winston and forward Nick Ward, both freshmen, are playing as of late. They look like and obviously Miles Bridges, loads of talent on this team, but it's weird to say this, but Michigan State is squarely a bubble team right now, and whenever those words have to come out of our mouths, that means that Michigan State has really disappointed. So it'll be interesting to see if Michigan State will turn it around. I imagine they will. Still have many chances to play against quality teams. Obviously, they're in the Big Ten, but this has not been their year so far. I also would like to point out that this year, or at least from this summer on, has not been good for Michigan State athletics in general. Their football team went 3-9. This was not a Michigan State's fall from supremacy happened pretty quick. So a lot to take in for Spartans fans. But yeah, like I said, it's going to be very interesting to watch how this team shapes out. All right, so we're going to move on to the player of the first half, and with Sean, take it away.
So really coming into the year, we thought Grayson Allen was clear-cut player of the year. He's kind of, I wouldn't say disappointed, but we'll talk about him later, but he's definitely not lived up to the hype. I don't know if that's just because he's got so many other players around him, so he doesn't have to do much or whatever it is. But the player that we agreed on is player of the year as of now is Villanova's Josh Hart. According to KenPom, he's one of the most efficient players in the country, currently in the lead for player of the year. And really, just look at his numbers. It's incredible. He's shooting 81% from the free throw line, 64% from twos, and 43% from three. That's just ridiculous. And he's had games this year where he's basically single-handedly carried Villanova. Against Temple, he had 26. Against Notre Dame, he had 37 and 10 rebounds, 11 rebounds, which was absolutely ridiculous. And it's just crazy to see kind of coming into the year. We didn't really know. We knew this Villanova team, they lost a couple players, Archidiakono and Ochefu, and really we were wondering who was going to step up for them. And really Josh Hart has answered the call and just carried this team and been their most efficient guy day in and day out. Even if I shouldn't say that. He hasn't really had one bad shooting game this year. He's only had one game against LaSalle where he was 6 of 14 from the field, and that was his worst game, and he had 21 points. So honestly, if I had to name a player of the year right now, it would definitely be Josh Hart, just because he's been so efficient and he's really just carrying this team, this Villanova team, and possibly running away with the Big East. But who knows? There's still a last season to be left, but definitely Josh Hart's been the guy, been the do-it-all guy for this Villanova team. And if his team keeps this up and he keeps this up, he'll definitely be player of the year, Naismith player of the year come end of the year. So another nominee we had for that was Lonzo Ball. as we all know, he's really been the catalyst for this UCLA team. So
we're going to talk about him later on, too.
Yeah, we'll talk about him later. And now we're going to transition to the biggest surprise player of the first half. Noah will be taking that over.
And that is UCLA freshman forward TJ Leaf. As you know, UCLA has been one of, if not the best teams in the country so far this 2016-17 season. And probably the best offensive team. I believe they score 96 points a game. That sounds about right. Maybe 95.8. They are the second-ranked offense behind the Citadel. But yeah, you know, a lot of the attention has been on Lonzo Ball and how good of a job he's done carrying this UCLA team. Like we said, Sean's going to get to that in a minute here. But we need to talk about TJ Leaf, who's really making a name for himself as an NBA draft prospect. This year he's never scored less than 12 points a game. He scored over 21 points 5 times and shoots at a ridiculously high clip at a 48.8%. The consistency from this guy is unreal. Night in and night out, Leaf is he's such a talented scorer. So I feel like TJ Leaf deserves a ton of credit for how well UCLA is playing right now, because I mean this guy's been one of the best scorers in the country, or at least consistent wise, and just he shoots. I mean, there's some crazy stat somewhere. I think that UCLA makes like 50% of their shots when Leaf is on the floor or something. He's just he's kind of contagious for that team. All right, so we're going to move on to the freshman of the first half, I believe. All right, Sean, why don't you take it away with that one?
So, TJ Leaf's Batman, or Robin, I would say, is fellow freshman teammate Lonzo Ball. He is our freshman of the first half. He's definitely been really the guy. He's really been the guy for UCLA. He hasn't really put up the most points. I mean, he averages double figures, but really, his impact on the floor is outstanding. Last year, we saw Bryce Alford didn't really have much around him, so he kind of had to do everything, but done a great job of just bringing this team together and really making them kind of the team they become. No one really has to do too much. The game kind of just comes natural to Lonzo now and all his teammates. I had question marks coming into the season of whether or not if his game would transition or work with UCLA style offense, but he's definitely proved me wrong so far. I said I wouldn't buy UCLA stock too early, but after they beat Kentucky on home at Kentucky, then a week later just dismantled Michigan in the second half. Really, you had to buy into this kid's stock and UCLA stock in general, because with the Pac-12 season coming up, really I think they can run away with this, and Lonzo Ball is the big reason why. So yeah, that's my little talk about Lonzo Ball. And some other nominees I had for that was Zach Collins for Gonzaga. As Coach Mark Few said for the Zags, this is his best team at Gonzaga, which is kind of scary to think because they've had great teams before with Kelly Olynyk and Kevin Pangos and all those guys. So he's definitely another one to watch. And then, of course, Malik Monk, as we know, dropped 47 at Kentucky and has really stepped into that main scorer role for the Wildcats. So those are a couple other nominees. And now Noah will take over the play of the first half of the 2016 basketball season,
which is Malik Monk's three-pointer versus UNC to cap off his 47-point night. Like as you talked about, Sean, that was one of the most insane performances in recent history. And Monk had the perfect ending to it, and also we talked about like how historic of a game this was. I mean, historically good. This game was tied at 100 with 16 seconds to go, and Kentucky kicked it out to their guy all night, Malik Monk, and stepped back. That was a beautiful 3-pointer, one of 8 in that game for Monk. 8 out of 12. That's just crazy, and it ended up sealing the game. I mean, it was like I said, it was just the perfect way to in that historic performance for him. He didn't exactly respond too well to Louisville, but I don't think anyone's going to forget about that game or that 3-pointer in particular that got Kentucky an absolute huge win. Crazy game. All right, so we're going to move on to the next award, which is Team of the First Half. All right, Sean. Let's hear what the winner for that award is.
Much like our coach of the first half, our team of the first half is going to have the head coach of our coach of the first half. So our team of the first half is the Baylor Bears. And really coming into the season, like Noah said earlier, consistency was a huge question for this team. And after they beat Oregon, who did not have Dylan Brooks, I don't remember if they had Dylan Brooks at the time.
I don't think they did. No,
Yeah,
they didn't.
they did not have Dylan Brooks at the time. And they
dominated them, too.
They just dismantled Oregon. And Oregon's got some talented players, too. But really, this Baylor team, that was kind of a wake-up call for all us college basketball fans to kind of let us know that this Baylor team is they're for real this year. And then they played a very good VCU team, and then Michigan State at the Battle for Atlantis. And then they made it to the championship in that tournament, and they played Louisville. And Louisville was just absolutely blowing out Baylor, and really they had no answer for them. And then they had a huge run late in the second half, and somehow, some way, Baylor came away with a win. And that game was just absolutely insane and really showed that this Baylor team, they're not going to struggle with consistency this year. They trying to prove to the college basketball world, but yeah, it was just an incredible game. And then they played Xavier at home. It was a close game until maybe 12 minutes in the second half. And Manu Lectome, the transfer point guard, just absolutely single-handedly beat Xavier and just ran away with the game. So Xavier, I mean, they haven't been that good this year, but definitely that's a big-time win against a backcourt of Trayvon Blewett and JP McCura. And like I said earlier, Xavier's not a bad team, but Baylor just absolutely dominated them in the last 10 minutes or so of the second half. And coming into Big 12 play, they got a chance to maybe, I don't know if they'll win the whole thing because there's teams like West Virginia and Kansas. And as we know, Kansas is, like 13 years now they've won the Big 12, something like that. So maybe Baylor has a chance to knock it off. I don't really know. And that streak, I'm not really sure, but who knows? They got the talent. They got Motley and Lectome. They definitely have a chance to win the Big 12, but who knows? I'm excited to watch, but Baylor is our team of the first half. So now we're going to transition, and not really a category you want to be in, but it's much similar to the Sports Center not top 10. We're going to talk about our College Pride Press not top 4 of the first half of the college basketball season. So I'll start with this one.
Yeah.
The first award is, or the number 4 on the list, is Iowa coach Fran McCaffery refusing to shake hands with North Dakota after Iowa won the game 81-73. And we know that McCaffery has had an issue in the past with his temper. He's a very animated coach. And at the end of this game, the Iowa player grabbed a rebound. North Dakota player stole it from the Iowa player and laid it in to beat the buzzer. And McCaffery's team in Iowa still won, but McCaffery came storming back into the locker room and refused to shake the other team's hand. So seeing that was kind of like, because McCaffrey, I mean, I'm sure he's angry. His team is not very good this year. Definitely a downfall from last year, but really, that's gonna perfectly land you a spot on this list because, as me and Noah know, the CPP guys aren't too fond of Fran McCaffrey and kind of
Yeah.
laugh at him every time he coaches. But that's number 4 on the list.
All right, so I'm going to take it away with number 3 and number 2. Number 3 for us was 7th Woods of UNC's 2 dunks in the final 15 seconds against Northern Iowa a few days back. You know, I mean, UNC was up by like 41, 42 points. They had that game in control. Northern Illinois or Northern Iowa was just trying to, dribble out the clock. And then 7th Woods, and not a very classy move at all, steals the ball away and dunks it with 1 second remaining. I mean, he absolutely took off for that hoop. It was pretty funny seeing Roy Williams' face. He was in the middle of shaking hands with the UNI coach and players. And when he heard that the clock stopped, he gave Woods the death stare. I can't imagine what he told Woods in the locker room after that. All right, so now for number 2. Speaking of people that our at speaking of people that are not very popular in the CPP group chat, we have Grayson Allen's trip. Yet another one from him. This is big news. I don't know, when was this? A few days back. I think it was Tuesday. He tripped.
Yeah, something like that.
So he lost his temper again against on an Elon player, Steven Santa Anna, and tripped him. That's like his. I think it's
Third.
like his third in the
Third in
past
the
year.
calendar year.
So
Calendar year, yeah.
yeah. And I mean, this is controlling his temper has always been an issue for Allen. I think it's good that there was finally some disciplinary action. Because I mean, his meltdown on the bench afterwards too. I mean, he's just, as you can tell, he's not a guy that can control his emotions very well. And I mean, he's the star of this team. He's going to need to do that if this Duke team is going to go far. And we know they're going to go far, but it's going to be difficult to do with Allen's emotions all over the place, like we've seen. He said he was past that. He said that he was done tripping people. He said he moved on, but as you can, there's still some issues there. So, that's the number 2 entry on CPP Game Days, not top 4. Allen's trip of an Elon player. Actually, Duke almost lost that game, by the way. That was, I think Elon had the lead in the first half, so a lot of frustrations. Duke did not play a very good game there. So, and
yeah,
wasn't very much fun to be a Duke fan over that time.
Yeah, but wishing nothing but the best for Grayson Allen. I mean, hopefully he finds help or finds peace with himself, but who knows? Be interesting to watch to see how he handles himself the rest of the year and how Coach K kind of goes about that.
All right, so it's going to be time for number 1. Sean, why don't you take it away?
So for the past couple, the last 3 kind of not top 10 we talked about, they were kind of bigger school. This one is more of a small school, but I'm sure most of you college basketball fans know that early on in the year, Bryant and Brown were playing against each other. Both Division I schools. Brown in the Ivy League. I think Bryant's in the Patriot League. I'm not really sure, but
yeah, they are.
Yeah, both they were. It's a big rivalry, I guess, on the East Coast. But Bryant was losing, or they were up. They were winning the game, Brown was losing the game, and then a Bryant player hit a 3-pointer, which gave Bryant the lead with 12 seconds remaining. And then a Brown player made a layup with 3.8 seconds left to give his team the lead. And the Bryant freshman, Ikina Nigduba, I think that's how you say his name, he dribbled out the final seconds of the game and tossed the ball in the air and proceeded to try and give his a high five from his teammate. And it turns out that Bryant was actually losing the game 91-90, and Ikina Nigduba was not aware of the score of the game. So really, that's just, and they ended up losing the game too. And it just
the one thing you have to be aware of, the score.
Yeah, exactly. And especially in a close game like that, I'm not really sure how you can see not know what the score is or anything. I mean, sometimes when I played, I wouldn't know what the score was, but that's like early on in the game or something like that. But at all times, you got to know when your team is scoring or what the score is, especially that late in the game. And it's really disappointing to see a player like that, a D1 player, a freshman especially, get recruited, play Division I basketball, and absolutely lose the game just because he wasn't aware of how much time was left on the clock.
You have to feel bad for him. You have to feel bad for him too. I mean, that's just so embarrassing. Also, this isn't exactly a rare thing in sports. In baseball, we've seen players forgetting the number of outs. In football, we had I don't know if you remember in week 1 of the NFL, the Cowboys wide receiver Terrence Williams, he ran out of bounds, or no, he didn't run out of bounds. There was like 5 seconds left on the clock, and they were trying to drive down the field. So that's not completely uncommon, but
or in the NFL when they drop the ball before they step into the end zone, and then or college football too. But
that happened to Ray McLeod of Clemson earlier this year.
I mean, it's a human element of sports. It gives us fans something to laugh about. I'm sure he'll be laughing about it in a couple of years, but definitely hurt that night. So,
all right. So that's pretty much it. I really hope you guys enjoyed it. I know that I had a ton of fun, and I know Sean did too. Doling out these awards. Pretty fun episode. So we will be back to our normal format Thursday, December 29th for our first episode of conference play. So that's going to be something to look forward to. But for now, have a great Christmas weekend, everybody. Thanks for listening. Like I said, be sure to subscribe to us and follow us on Twitter. And as always, check out the site. And like I said, we'll be back on Thursday. And thanks for listening. We'll see you guys later.
Yeah, make sure to check us out on Twitter too. We are becoming a little more active now in the Twitter world. So make sure to ask us any questions. We got a bunch of writers on the account. Kind of waiting to hear from you guys about each your questions, and we're more than happy to answer them. So thanks again, guys, and we'll see you next week for the, like Noah said, first episode of conference play. So happy holidays to you all, and go Hoosiers, I guess.
Go Hoos too.
All right, whatever you say.